She slammed her Lexus straight into my tractor at 40 miles per hour. The crunch of metal against metal echoed across my cornfield like a gunshot. Before I could even process what had happened, she stumbled out of that silver car, phone already pressed to her ear, screaming into it like she was the victim. "Yes, I need officers immediately," she shrieked. "He attacked me with a vehicle. Yes, a tractor. He left it in the road on purpose." I stood there in my own field, on my own land, watching this woman lie to the police while the dust from her collision still hung in the air. Then she did something that would cost her everything. She picked up a rock from the side of the gravel road and hurled it straight at my tractor windshield. The glass cracked with a sharp spiderweb fracture right across the center. She had no idea I was recording every single second. She had no idea that the woman who had terrorized my neighborhood for 7 years was about to lose everything because she picked the wrong farmer to bully. This is the story of how a retired army sergeant took down the most vindictive HOA president in the county using nothing but patience, documentation, and the truth. After 22 years in the army, most of them spent overseas in places where the sand got into everything and the silence between explosions was the only peace you could find. I came home to quiet cornfields and a worn-out red barn. I was not chasing peace. I was rebuilding it. My father's land had sat mostly untouched since he passed away 3 years earlier. My brother had tried to keep it going for a while, but after a nasty fall from a ladder and an HOA that did not take kindly to farm equipment on what they called decorative streets, he sold his portion and moved to Idaho. I bought back what I could. I pulled the weeds that had swallowed the fence posts. I repaired the irrigation lines that had cracked during 2 winters of neglect. And I took to rebuilding the old Massey Ferguson tractor my dad had left behind, the same one he taught me to drive when I was barely tall enough to reach the pedals. I did not move back to be anyone's neighbor. I moved back to be a steward of what remained. Rows of cracked earth that once yielded corn taller than I could reach under a sky, so wide it still startled me after years spent inside war zone tents. The house was modest. A 2-bedroom rancher with wood siding faded to a soft gray, just like my hair. My name is Wade Coburn. I was a sergeant. I survived IEDs, night raids, and bureaucrats in Washington who thought they knew better than the men on the ground. But none of that, not a single day of it, prepared me for the HOA in the Stone Creek Estates neighborhood. Before we go any further, I need you to understand something. If you believe that people like Karen should not exist, or at the very least should face consequences for their actions, then you need to subscribe to this channel right now. We provide daily stories about entitled neighbors, HOA tyrants, and everyday bullies who think they can push people around without consequence. These stories will change how you see the world. They will satisfy that part of you that craves justice in an unjust world. So hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join the hundreds of thousands of people who believe that standing up for yourself matters. Now let me tell you about Karen Nestor, the woman who thought she could run my life from her second-floor balcony. Stone Creek Estates had been built right along the western fence line of my property about 10 years back. Some bright-eyed developer had the idea of turning farmland into beige stucco suburban luxury. You could smell the fertilizer in the morning if the wind blew right. But if you ignored that and focused on your granite countertops and 3-car garages, you could pretend it was paradise. They were all packed in tight over there. Houses so close together, you could hear your neighbor sneeze through the walls. Every lawn was perfectly mowed to HOA specifications. Every mailbox was painted in an HOA-approved color. There were newsletters about keeping dogs on leashes and trash bins hidden behind decorative fences. It was Stepford with a Starbucks on the corner, and ruling over all of it like a queen on her throne was Karen. She showed up the third morning after I moved in. I had barely poured my second cup of coffee, still dressed in a worn-out army t-shirt and cargo pants, when I heard a knock at the door. Not a polite knock, not a neighbor bringing cookies knock. This was a commanding knock, the kind that said the person on the other side believed they had authority over you before you even opened the door. I walked over and pulled it open to see a woman in her 50s with iron-stiff hair that looked like it had been shellacked into place. expensive sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, and a clipboard clutched to her chest like it was a badge of office. "You are the new occupant," she said, not asked, said. And before I could respond, she was already peering past me into my house like she owned the place, taking mental notes on my furniture arrangement and the boxes I had not yet unpacked. "I am the owner," I replied, emphasizing that word in a way that should have told her everything she needed to know about how this conversation was going to go. She smiled thinly, the kind of smile that never reaches the eyes. "Karen Nestor," she announced. "I am the president of the Stone Creek Estates Homeowners Association. We just wanted to welcome you to the neighborhood and also clarify some property expectations." I almost laughed right there on my own porch. I looked past her at the vast stretch of my land behind me, the cornfield waiting to be replanted, the barn needing repair, the fence posts my father had set in the ground 30 years ago. "This is not part of Stone Creek," I said, motioning to encompass everything that was mine. "I own it outright. Been in my family 3 generations. No HOA jurisdiction here." Her smile twitched, but she did not miss a beat. "I see," she said, her voice taking on an edge that I would come to know very well over the following months. "But we have visual covenants. What happens on adjacent properties affects our community. Property values, for example. Tractors and unsightly tools visible from our homes can have a negative impact." I blinked at her, genuinely unsure if she was serious. "Are you actually telling me I cannot have farm equipment on my farm?" She nodded as if this was the most reasonable request in the world. "Stone Creek is committed to maintaining a certain aesthetic standard. The homes on Willowbury lane back up to your eastern field. We expect respectful cooperation from all adjacent landowners." I did not respond right away. I just stared at her long enough that she finally shifted on her feet, the first crack in her confident facade. She offered a quick "have a nice day" and turned to leave, heels clicking across my porch like she was retreating from a battlefield she had not expected to find. I thought that was the end of it. Just a neighbor flexing imagined authority, testing the new guy to see if he would fold. I had dealt with far worse in the military. Commanders who thought they knew better than the boots on the ground, politicians who made decisions from air-conditioned offices thousands of miles from the consequences. I figured Karen was the suburban equivalent. Annoying but ultimately harmless. I was wrong. Within a week, I received a typed notice delivered by hand, not through the mail. It stated in official-looking language that my equipment constituted a visual nuisance and might violate setback expectations. There were references to community standards, neighborhood harmony, and even a citation of an obscure municipal code that I later discovered only applied to properties within HOA boundaries. Mine was not. I tossed the notice in the trash where it belonged and went back to rebuilding the tractor engine. Then came the drone. One afternoon, while I was cleaning out the barn, sweeping years of dust and debris from corners that had not seen daylight since my father was alive, I heard a soft buzz overhead. I looked up to see a camera drone hovering above my field, dipping low enough to stir the tall grass, clearly recording everything below. I did not need to guess where it came from. Karen's house sat on a slight rise, and her second-floor balcony had a perfect view of my property. I could see a figure up there, watching. I waved at the drone and kept working. That night, a photo of my tractor appeared in the Stone Creek digital newsletter with the caption "New Neighbor Raises Safety Concerns. Heavy machinery near school bus stop." I only knew about it because a friend of mine from town who happened to live in the subdivision forwarded it to me with a message. "Watch your back, Wade. She is gunning for you." Still, I did not budge, because I knew something Karen did not. This land was mine, and not just in some metaphorical sense of belonging. I had the surveys. I had the title deeds going back 3 generations. I had the permits and the zoning classifications. The cornfield she hated was zoned agricultural, had been since before her precious subdivision was even a gleam in some developer's eye. The tractor she sneered at was registered, inspected, and operational under state farm use regulations. I had fought for rights overseas in places where the concept of property ownership was written in blood. I was not about to surrender them on my own soil because some clipboard-wielding busybody did not like the view from her balcony. The weeks rolled on. and I kept my head down and worked. I repaired the irrigation lines that my brother had let fall into disrepair. I replanted half an acre with winter cover crops to prepare the soil for spring corn. I got the tractor running after 2 months of tinkering, replacing gaskets and seals, and one particularly stubborn fuel pump that had corroded almost beyond recognition. Every time that engine roared to life, I thought of my father. He would have been proud. Karen sent more notices. I ignored them. She called code enforcement. They came out, took one look at the property boundaries, compared them to my deed, and left with sheepish smiles and apologies for wasting my time. She complained about noise. She complained about dust. She complained about the smell of diesel that she claimed wafted into her backyard during what she called family time. Each complaint was logged and dismissed, but the pressure was building. I could feel it like a change, in barometric pressure, before a storm. Neighbors started giving me looks when I drove past in my truck. Someone tossed eggs at my mailbox one night, splattering yellow yolk across the faded metal. Karen took photos from her Lexus every time she drove by my property, slowing down just enough to make sure I saw her doing it. She wanted me to know I was being watched. She wanted me to feel surrounded. What she did not realize was that I had spent years being watched by people who actually wanted to kill me. A middle-aged woman with a camera phone was not going to break my nerve. And then came harvest season. It was the first real yield I had coaxed from that land since I moved back. Rows of golden corn waved in the late summer breeze, taller than my head, promising something close to homegrown pride. I woke up early that morning, 5:30 sharp, when the sky was still more purple than blue and the birds were just starting to stir. I fired up the tractor. The old engine coughed once, then roared to life with a rumble that shook the morning silence. It was not quiet. It never was, but it was honest. I climbed aboard with a thermos of coffee tucked beside me and drove toward the field, thinking of my dad. He used to say that the sound of a working tractor was the heartbeat of the land. That morning, I felt that heartbeat pounding through my chest. I did not know Karen was already watching from her window, phone in hand, plotting her next move. That was the morning everything changed. By the time the sun had climbed high enough to cast gold across the corn, I had already cleared half a row. The harvest was going smoother than I expected. No engine hiccups, no jammed blades, no hose leaks spraying hydraulic fluid across the machinery. The tractor thumped along steady and proud, kicking up a soft cloud of dust behind me as I worked. I was sweating through my shirt, but I did not care. Every foot of cleared row felt like reclaiming something I had lost during my years overseas. Something solid, something rooted. Then I saw her. Karen was standing at the edge of her perfectly manicured lawn, separated from my cornfield by the boundary fence. It was wooden slats, 6 feet tall, built years ago by my father when Stone Creek first started encroaching on our land. She was wearing a sun hat the size of a beach umbrella and a matching red athletic outfit that looked like she had stepped out of a fitness catalog. Under one arm, she carried a small yapping dog. In her other hand, raised above the fence line from a garden stool she was standing on, was her phone. She was filming me. I kept driving, finishing my pass through the row. On the return trip, she was still there. Only now she was yelling something I could not hear over the rumble of the engine. Her gestures told the story, though, a pointed finger jabbing toward me, a shake of her head so violent her sun hat nearly flew off, her free hand dramatically covering her nose and mouth. The dust. She was furious about the dust. I stopped the tractor at the end of the row, parked it by the field's edge, and walked toward her slowly, wiping my face with a rag I kept in my back pocket. Morning, I said, keeping my voice neutral. The kind of neutral that took years to perfect. The kind of calm that says I am not afraid of you and never will be. This is unacceptable, she snapped before I could say anything else. You are choking the entire neighborhood. My patio cushions are covered in corn dust. I cannot breathe over the stench of diesel. I glanced back at the field, at the rows of corn waiting to be harvested, at the tractor that had been doing this exact work in this exact place for decades before Karen ever moved into her beige stucco palace. It is corn harvest, I said simply. It has been done this way for generations. I'm not doing anything illegal. This is a residential area, she shot back, her voice rising to that particular pitch that people use when they believe volume equals authority. You are disturbing the peace. This is my property, I replied calmly. And it is zoned agricultural. Always has been. You live next to a farm. Farms harvest. They make noise. They produce dust. That is how it works. She scoffed, an ugly sound that did not match her expensive outfit. That may be what it says on paper, but this community has standards. There are children trying to nap. I have guests arriving this afternoon. I blinked at her. Ma'am, with all due respect, your guests will survive. That did it. She turned beet red, the flush spreading from her cheeks down her neck. You are going to hear from the HOA about this, she hissed. I raised an eyebrow. Again, I said, and turned to walk back to my tractor. Behind me, I heard her let out a frustrated huff and storm back toward her house, her little dog yapping in rhythm with her heels clicking across the flagstone patio. I watched her door slam before I climbed back aboard the tractor and finished the day's work. I wrapped up around 3 in the afternoon, parked the tractor beneath the barn awning, and went inside to shower off the dirt and sweat. By 5 o'clock, I was sitting at my kitchen table eating leftover brisket when the email arrived. The subject line read urgent community concern. Immediate cessation of agricultural operations requested. It was from Karen Nestor, Stone Creek Estates HOA president. The body of the email was addressed to me and copied to what looked like half the neighborhood. It read, Mr. Coburn, we have received multiple complaints regarding your use of industrial farm equipment adjacent to a residential neighborhood. The dust, noise, and fumes are in violation of community expectations and present a verified health hazard to homeowners in the Willowbury Lane section. You are formally requested to cease all agricultural operations until a full HOA review can be conducted. A failure to comply will result in escalated enforcement action. Sincerely, Karen Nestor, President, Stone Creek Estates HOA. I read it twice, then laughed out loud so hard I nearly choked on my brisket. She had no authority over my land, none whatsoever, but she was trying to bluff me into compliance, hoping the official language and the threat of escalation would scare me into backing down. Instead of replying, I forwarded the email to my lawyer, Jeff Carson. He was a friend from high school who now worked in land use law in the next county. I added a brief note. Round 2. She is getting creative. Then I walked back outside and resumed cleaning the debris from the tractor's harvesting attachment. The next day, Karen escalated exactly as I expected her to. I woke up to find a new sign staked right on the edge of the HOA side of the fence, near the walking trail that wound through their subdivision. It read in bold red letters, Caution, dangerous farm machinery ahead, children and pets at risk, avoid this area. And beneath that warning, a line that said report concerns to Stone Creek HOA with Karen's personal phone number printed in bold. I did not touch the sign. I did not have to. I took photographs of it from multiple angles, time-stamped them on my phone, and added them to a growing folder I had started on my computer. I labeled it HOA nonsense. Later that week, I received a visit from a county zoning officer. A tired-looking man in a khaki button-up shirt with a clipboard and the weary expression of someone who had dealt with too many Karen complaints in his career. He walked the property line with me, took notes on the boundary markers, asked about my harvesting schedule and equipment maintenance, and then chuckled when I mentioned the emails and notices I had been receiving. She files complaints weekly, he muttered, not bothering to hide his exasperation. Usually about patio umbrellas being the wrong shade or mailboxes that are 2 inches too tall. This is the first time it has been about corn. He signed off that everything on my property was legal and properly zoned, gave me a copy of his report for my records, and left. Karen was not done. She cornered me 3 days later while I was checking my mailbox at the end of the driveway. It was early morning, fog still clinging to the fields, and I had not even finished my first cup of coffee when I heard her voice cutting through the mist. You have no idea who you are dealing with, she said, her voice low and dangerous in a way that might have been intimidating if I had not spent years facing actual danger. You may think you are some rugged cowboy out here playing farmer, but this is a community, and I will protect it from people like you. I raised an eyebrow, genuinely curious. People like me, I repeated. What exactly does that mean? She did not answer. She just gave me a look like I was the filth she had found in her swimming pool filter and marched off, heels sinking slightly into the soft ground with each step. That evening, I got a call from Officer James Cordell, a young cop I had known since he was in Little League. His father and I had served together briefly back in the early 90s. The kid had grown up to be a good man, honest and fair, the kind of officer who gave the uniform a good name. He was polite but direct when he called. "Hey, Wade," he said, "just a heads up. We received a noise complaint from the HOA about your property. Something about engine noise after hours. We logged it, but it is not enforceable. Your property is zoned agricultural, and you are operating during permitted hours. You are fine." I thanked him and hung up, adding the call to my mental log of Karen's escalating campaign. She was trying everything: noise complaints, safety concerns, health hazards, community standards violations. None of it stuck because none of it was real, but I could feel it building. Her desperation was growing. The harvest was entering its final phase. 2 more days, and the field would be clear, the corn processed and stored, the tractor parked until spring. And that is when Karen lost it completely. Because when you are someone like Karen, and the rules do not give you the outcome you want, you make your own rules. She was not going to wait for another HOA meeting or send another strongly worded email. She was going to act, and what she did next would change everything. By the second week of harvest, I was sleeping with one eye open, not from paranoia, but from experience. You do not spend decades in the military without developing a sixth sense for when someone is planning a move against you, and Karen was planning something. I could feel it in the way the neighborhood had gone quiet. No more complaints filed, no more notices left on my fence, no more drones buzzing overhead, just silence, the kind of silence that comes before an ambush. Her behavior shifted from passive-aggressive to openly hostile in ways that left evidence. On Monday morning, someone dumped a bag of lawn clippings and broken twigs over the fence onto the edge of my property. A pathetic gesture, but one that spoke volumes about her mindset. She was testing boundaries, seeing what she could get away with. I did not respond with anger. I just raked it into a pile and burned it with the rest of my brush. But I made a mental note. On Tuesday, a pair of city code inspectors appeared at my door without warning. Anonymous complaint, one of them said, already flipping open his booklet of regulations. Concerns about improper storage of fuel and potential groundwater contamination. I almost laughed at the absurdity. I walked them calmly out to the barn and showed them the sealed diesel drums sitting on the concrete containment berms I had built myself. I showed them the safety logs I kept out of sheer habit from my military days, documenting every fuel purchase and every maintenance check. One of the inspectors looked embarrassed. The other looked annoyed at having his time wasted on yet another Karen-driven crusade. Before they left, I handed them a folder containing aerial photos, zoning documents, and agricultural permits. Just in case this becomes a regular thing, I told them. Wednesday, I caught Karen taking photos from her car again. She pulled up in that silver Lexus of hers, slowed to almost a stop right at the edge of my property line, and leaned halfway out the window to snap pictures like she was some kind of HOA paparazzi. Only this time I was ready. Mounted discreetly beneath the overhang of my barn was a security camera I had installed the week before. Motion activated, high resolution, and pointed directly at the edge of my driveway. It captured everything: her car, her camera, her complete lack of shame or self-awareness. I backed up the footage that night and added it to the HOA nonsense folder. Thursday morning, I woke to find spray paint on my fence. Sloppy black letters scrawled across the wooden slats my father had built: "Keep it quiet." That was the first time I felt my hands clench into fists. She had crossed a line now. Vandalism was not just annoying, it was criminal. Still, I did not retaliate. I did not confront her. I did something far worse in Karen's mind. I stayed calm. I repainted the fence before noon. I installed a second camera facing the HOA walking path that ran behind my cornfield, and I did not call the police. Not yet. I wanted to see how far she would go, because sooner or later she would go too far. And when she did, I would have everything I needed to end this. That afternoon, I drove into town for fuel filters and happened to run into Deputy Sheriff Angela Booker at the hardware store. We had served together back in the day. Different branches, but same sandbox, same dust, same understanding of what it meant to face real danger. "You still wrangling that cornfield?" she asked as we waited in the checkout line. "Every day," I replied, "and dealing with the HOA circus that came with moving back." She gave me a knowing look that told me she had heard the stories. "Karen," she said. It was not a question. I raised an eyebrow. "You know her." Angela snorted. "Everyone knows Karen. She once called in a trespassing report on a Girl Scout who was selling cookies too close to her mailbox. Said the child was soliciting without a permit on HOA property. The Scouts had to send a lawyer letter." I chuckled, but inside I felt a chill. This was not just someone playing queen of the cul-de-sac. This was someone who weaponized authority to hurt people. Angela's voice dropped to something more serious. "Be careful, Wade. She has connections with a few folks on the zoning board, tries to work back channels when the front door does not open for her. But if she touches your equipment or your land directly, do not hesitate. Document everything and call me directly." I nodded, already building the case file in my mind. Angela leaned in slightly before she paid for her items. "Let her dig her own hole," she said. "People like her always do." When I got home that evening, something felt off. The gate to my east field had been left slightly ajar. I never left gates open, not with crops growing, not with equipment sitting out, not ever. It was a habit drilled into me by my father and reinforced by years of securing perimeters in hostile territory. I walked the entire perimeter slowly, heart rate steady but elevated, checking for signs of intrusion. Nothing was missing. The tractor was untouched. The barn doors were still locked. But someone had been there. Someone who wanted to send a message without getting caught. So I sent one back. I mounted a third camera above the east gate, hidden inside a hollowed-out fence post, and pointed directly at the HOA side of the walking path. 3 angles now. Full coverage. If Karen or anyone else stepped so much as a toe across my property line, I would know about it within seconds. Friday passed in tense silence. No letters, no emails, no unexpected visits, just the normal sounds of the farm and the whisper of corn stalks in the wind. But Saturday was when the storm finally broke. I had started up the tractor at my usual time, 6:15 in the morning, the sky just beginning to lighten at the edges. As I drove toward the field, I glanced up at Karen's house and saw her standing at her second-floor window, arms crossed over her chest. She was watching me, not filming this time, not yelling, just watching with the intensity of someone planning something terrible. It felt like the calm before the storm, and I knew in my gut that today was the day she would make her move. I cleared 2 more rows that morning, working steadily despite the tension crawling up my spine. Around 1 in the afternoon, I stopped the tractor for a routine check on the irrigation line that ran along the east edge of the property. I was crouched down, examining a valve connection, when I heard the roar of a car engine. Too close, too fast. I looked up just in time to see Karen's silver Lexus tearing down the gravel easement road that ran parallel to my field. She was not slowing down. My tractor sat halfway across the road, harvesting blades folded up, parked just off-center, where I always left it during maintenance breaks. Karen did not stop. She slammed straight into the front quarter panel with a sickening crunch of metal and glass. The Lexus bounced back from the impact, horn blaring, front end crumpled like an accordion. She threw open her door and stumbled out, phone already pressed to her ear before her feet even hit the ground. "Yes, I need officers immediately," she screamed into the phone. "He attacked me with a vehicle. Yes, a tractor. He left it in the road on purpose. This was intentional. He tried to kill me." Stood there, arms at my sides, watching this woman spin lies in real time. I did not move. I did not say a word. I just stared at her with the calm that comes from having faced far worse than a suburban bully with a dented Lexus. Then she did the thing that would cost her everything. She looked around, spotted a fist-sized rock at the edge of the gravel road, picked it up, and hurled it at my tractor windshield. The glass cracked on impact, a perfect spiderweb fracture spreading across the center. She probably thought no one would ever know. She probably thought it would be her word against mine. But I did not react. I just looked up slowly, deliberately, toward the fence post where camera 3 was hidden. The red recording light blinked steadily. It had caught everything. From the moment her car accelerated down that road, to the impact, to the fake 911 call, to the vandalism. Every single second was documented. When the police arrived 10 minutes later, led by Officer James Cordell in the first patrol car, Karen was already smiling. She rushed toward him before he even got out of his vehicle, waving her arms, pointing at me, launching into her performance. He came out of nowhere, officer, just barreled into the road with that machine. I barely had time to brake. He left it there on purpose to intimidate me. I am terrified. Look at what he did to my vehicle. Cordell, to his credit, did not nod along. He did not validate her hysteria. He just listened with a neutral expression, eyes moving between Karen and me, taking in the scene. He saw the crumpled Lexus. He saw the dented tractor. He saw the cracked windshield that should not have had any damage from a rear-end collision. Then he walked toward me. "You all right?" he asked quietly. "Fine," I said. "Tractor is not happy, though. She says you left it in the middle of the road intentionally." I shook my head. I pulled it to the side while I checked the irrigation valve, same as every morning. She is the one who came tearing down this easement at 40 miles an hour and rammed into it. I paused, then added the words that would seal her fate. And I got it all on camera. Cordell raised an eyebrow. Camera. I nodded toward the fence post where the hidden camera was mounted. Top corner. High resolution, full motion. Got everything from when she turned the corner, accelerated, hit the tractor, and then picked up that rock and smashed my windshield. Cordell followed my gaze, then looked back at me with something like respect in his eyes. "Can I see it?" he asked. "Already downloaded the footage," I said. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small USB drive. I had labeled it with the date and time-stamped, airtight. He took the drive and slid it into his breast pocket. Then he exhaled slowly. "Do you want to press charges?" I did not hesitate. "I want the truth to be documented," I said. "And I want her to stop using law enforcement as a weapon against someone who just wants to farm his own land in peace." Cordell gave a single nod. Understood. He walked back to where Karen was standing, and I watched her smile falter as she realized he was not coming to arrest me. He was not putting me in handcuffs. He was not even looking at me with suspicion. Instead, he was asking her to stay where she was while he reviewed the footage back at the station. Karen started yelling. "What do you mean footage? What footage? I am the victim here. I was assaulted." Cordell kept his tone perfectly even. "We will get a complete picture before finalizing any report, ma'am." She sputtered with indignation. She demanded to speak to a supervisor. She threatened to call someone with rank, someone important, someone who would understand her position in this community. He did not flinch. He just got into his patrol car and drove off with my USB drive and the truth locked safely in his pocket. I went back to work. There was still daylight left, and I had rows to finish. But even as the tractor rumbled back to life beneath me, I could feel something shifting. The storm had not passed. It had transformed. Something irreversible had begun, and Karen had no idea what was coming for her. The courthouse smelled like dust and lemon cleaner. I sat through most of the preliminary hearing with my arms crossed, unmoving, listening as Karen's lawyer flailed through arguments that did not hold water. They tried to claim defamation, emotional sabotage, even a far-fetched theory that I had intentionally provoked conflict to publicly humiliate their client. But the judge did not buy a word of it. Judge Reinhardt was a seasoned man with a face like weathered granite and patience forged by decades of listening to people who mistook opinion for law. He gave Karen's legal team their time. He let them present their cherry-picked email screenshots that conveniently lacked metadata. He let them call 2 HOA members as witnesses, both of whom had already quietly retracted their statements in private depositions. Then he turned to Jeff, my lawyer, and Jeff did what Jeff always does. He dismantled their case with grace, with clarity, with the calm precision of a surgeon removing a tumor. He laid out the video footage first. The collision, the vandalism, the 911 call where Karen pretended to be a victim while standing next to the damage she had just caused. He presented the zoning maps that proved my land was not and had never been under HOA jurisdiction. He submitted the easement contracts, showing that Stone Creek had no legal authority over the gravel road Karen claimed I had blocked. He entered into evidence a sworn affidavit from the county clerk confirming every boundary line and property classification. Then he pulled out the financial documents. The printouts showing Karen had signed off on over $12,000 in landscaping fees paid to her nephew, with not a single receipt or invoice ever filed with the HOA board. And finally, the line item that made the judge's eyebrows rise. A $500 monthly stipend Karen had written to herself, labeled administrative overhead, for 7 years straight. The judge took it all in silently. Then he asked one question. Ms. Nestor, did you ever inform the HOA board of these payments to yourself? Karen stammered. They were standard, she said. Industry standard. I ran the entire operation. Without formal votes, I had their support. Mostly. The judge nodded once, slowly. Then he looked at me. Mr. Coburn, do you wish to pursue criminal charges related to the misappropriation of HOA funds? I met his eyes, then looked down at my hands. Calloused, steady. The hands of a man who had already fought more battles than any person should have to. No, Your Honor, I said. I do not want revenge. I just want to be left alone. The courtroom was silent. The judge cleared his throat. In that case, I am dismissing the plaintiff's civil claims with prejudice. I am awarding Mr. Coburn full compensation for property damage, legal expenses, and lost productivity during the harvest season. Additionally, I am referring the Stone Creek Estates HOA for an independent financial audit under county supervision. And regarding the false police report and vehicular vandalism documented in the video evidence, those matters will be forwarded to the district attorney for potential criminal prosecution. He tapped his gavel once, and just like that, it was over. Karen did not look at me as she left the courtroom. Her cheeks burned red with humiliation and rage. Her gait was stiff with the denial of someone who still could not believe she had lost. She brushed past the reporters who had gathered outside without a word. One of them called out, Ms. Nestor, do you still plan to lead your community? She slammed the courthouse door behind her so hard the glass rattled in its frame. Jeff packed up our files, grinning like a fox who had just raided the henhouse. Want to do a press conference, he asked. Nope, I said, grabbing my jacket. I want a sandwich. We drove back to the farm in my old truck, the fields passing by in quiet strips of brown and gold. Fall was settling in properly now, the air crisp with the promise of winter. But it did not feel bitter anymore. It felt earned. In the weeks that followed, neighbors started stopping by again. First came Julie with her young son, thanking me for standing up when no one else had the courage to. Then Glenn and 2 other HOA board members, now humbled and sincere, asking if I would be willing to consult on the new charter they were writing. They wanted term limits, financial oversight, real transparency. I told them I had one condition. Do not knock on my door before 9 in the morning. They laughed and agreed. Karen's house went up for sale the following week. No announcement, no dramatic farewell post in the neighborhood Facebook group, just a quiet realtor sign on the lawn and an empty driveway. She left without saying goodbye to anyone. I heard later that she moved 2 states away to a town where nobody knew her name or her history. I did not celebrate. I just took a long walk along the edge of the gravel road she had once tried to control. The steel gate I had installed still stood strong, but it felt more like a monument now than a barrier. On the other side, winter rye sprouted in soft green rows across the field, hopeful and persistent. The frost came late that year. Most mornings I woke to find the grass silver-tipped and glistening, the barn roof shimmering under the low winter sun. The corn was long gone, the fields quiet and resting. Everything seemed to exhale. I would walk the rows in the early hours, boots crunching on frozen ground, and pause to listen. There is a kind of silence you only find after conflict. It is not empty. It is full, full of everything that was fought for and held onto. I had earned that silence. One afternoon, I found myself back in the barn, staring at the old Massey Ferguson tractor, the one Karen had rammed, the one I had rebuilt twice now. It still bore a faint scar on the front fender, a dent I had chosen not to hammer out. I ran my fingers along the hood and smiled. That machine had endured more than weather and wear. It had stood unflinching in the face of entitlement and abuse of power. It had become a symbol of something bigger than any of us. Resilience, maybe. Or just good old-fashioned stubbornness. Julie's son started riding his bike down the gravel road on weekends, helmet too big and smile too wide. He would pause near the gate, lean against the post, and wave until I waved back. One Sunday afternoon, a boy about 10 years old appeared at the edge of my property with a notebook tucked under his arm. His father stood a respectful distance behind, hands in his pockets. "Mr. Coburn," the boy called out. "My dad says you fought a war with a tractor." I laughed, a real laugh, the first one in months. "Something like that," I said. "Can I see it?" he asked, pointing toward the barn. I nodded. "Only if you help me finish changing this bolt." He climbed up beside me, and I handed him the wrench. We worked in companionable silence for a while, and I thought about how some wars are fought in boardrooms and courthouses. Some are fought with patience and documentation, and the stubborn refusal to be bullied off your own land. As the sky turned indigo and stars blinked into view that evening, I sat on my porch and let the cool air settle on my face. In the distance, a single owl called out from the edge of the field. The corn was gone, but the land remained. The HOA had been restructured, the bully had been defeated, and a retired soldier had found something he had been searching for since he first came home. Peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of purpose. Not silence, but the sound of a tractor engine ready for spring. If you made it this far, you understand something important. This story was never really about a tractor or an HOA or even Karen. It was about what happens when ordinary people refuse to be pushed around by those who confuse authority with power. It was about standing your ground when everyone tells you to back down. It was about the patience required to let the truth speak for itself. If this story resonated with you, if it made you feel something real, then I need you to do one thing. Subscribe to this channel right now, turn on notifications, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that standing up for yourself is always worth it. We post stories like this every single day. Stories about entitled neighbors who finally meet their match. Stories about HOA tyrants who push too far and pay the price. Stories about ordinary people who discover they are capable of extraordinary courage. Every time you subscribe, every time you share, you help us reach more people who need to know they are not alone. You are not alone. There are millions of us out here, dealing with our own Karens, fighting our own quiet battles, refusing to surrender what is ours. So hit that subscribe button. Join the community. And remember what a retired army sergeant learned in a cornfield in the heart of America. Sometimes the loudest people are the weakest. Sometimes patience is the most powerful weapon. And sometimes the person who stays calm, who documents everything, who refuses to react with anger, is the person who wins. The land is still mine. The tractor still runs. And every morning when the sun comes up over those fields, I think about my father, about the legacy he left me, and about the woman who tried to take it all away. She failed. And if you are facing your own Karen right now, reading this and wondering if you have what it takes to fight back, let me tell you something. You do. You absolutely do. Document everything. Stay calm. And let them dig their own hole. They always do.